My name is Mackenzie Thompson, and I'm 32 years old. Standing in that cold courthouse hallway, watching my 7-year-old daughter Lily tug at my sleeve with those innocent brown eyes, I never imagined the words about to come out of her mouth would expose my family's darkest secrets. For years, my parents and sister had manipulated, betrayed, and tortured me over my grandmother's house, claiming I had stolen what rightfully belonged to my sister. They threw me out of their lives, turned the entire family against me, and tried to destroy everything I held dear. But sometimes, the truth comes from the most unexpected places, and justice arrives through the pure heart of a child. Before I dive into this incredible story of family betrayal and ultimate justice, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your location in the comments below, and don't forget to hit that like button if you're ready for a wild ride of family drama. Make sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell because this story will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about family loyalty. Trust me, you won't want to miss what my daughter revealed in that courtroom that changed everything forever. Growing up in the Thompson household meant living in the shadow of my younger sister Amber. From the moment she was born 3 years after me, it became crystal clear that I was the forgotten daughter while Amber was the shining star who could do no wrong. My parents, Harold and Beatrice Thompson, made no effort to hide their favoritism, and every day of my childhood felt like a constant reminder that I would never measure up to their precious golden child. Birthday parties were the worst torture. While Amber received elaborate celebrations with pony rides, bounce houses, and tables overflowing with expensive gifts, my birthdays were afterthoughts. I remember turning 10 and watching Amber, who wasn't even the birthday girl, receive 2 presents while I got a single small book from the dollar store. When I dared to ask why, my mother Beatrice looked at me with those cold blue eyes and said, "Amber has been such a good girl this month. She deserves something special too." That became the pattern for everything in our house. Amber's mediocrity was celebrated while my achievements were invisible. School accomplishments meant nothing when your name was Mackenzie Thompson. I brought home straight-A report cards, honor roll certificates, and academic awards, only to have them glanced at briefly before being shoved into a drawer. Meanwhile, when Amber managed to scrape together a C+ in basic math, my parents threw her an ice cream party and called the grandparents to brag about her improvement. The message was clear: I was expected to excel because that's what I was supposed to do, while Amber was praised for breathing. College planning revealed the true depth of their favoritism. When it came time for higher education, my parents gladly wrote check after check for Amber's expensive private college tuition, complete with sorority fees, a luxury dorm room, and a brand new car for campus. When I asked about college funding, my father Harold barely looked up from his newspaper and muttered, "Smart girls like you find ways to pay for themselves." I worked 3 jobs throughout community college, surviving on ramen noodles and library coffee while Amber posted Instagram pictures of her spring break trips to Cancun, all funded by our parents. The emotional abuse was relentless and systematic. Every conversation included comparisons that cut deep into my soul. "Why can't you be more social like Amber? Amber never complains about helping with chores like you do. Your sister has such a sweet personality, maybe you should try being nicer." I spent years desperately trying to earn their approval, volunteering for every household task, maintaining perfect grades, and suppressing my own needs to avoid their criticism. Eventually, I realized that nothing I did would ever be enough because the game was rigged from the start. Meeting Derek when I was 24 felt like finding water in a desert. He was kind, supportive, and actually listened when I spoke. For the first time in my life, someone valued my thoughts, celebrated my successes, and made me feel worthy of love. When Derek proposed after 2 years of dating, I was over the moon, but my parents' reaction was predictably disappointing. My mother sighed heavily and said, "Well, I suppose someone has to marry you eventually." My father didn't even look up from his television show. Wedding planning became another battlefield where I learned that my happiness would always come second to Amber's needs. When I excitedly shared our engagement news and modest wedding plans, my parents immediately launched into complaints about money being tight. 2 weeks later, I discovered they had booked and paid for Amber's $3,000 spring break trip to Europe because she needed to experience culture before graduating. When I asked about even a small contribution to the wedding, my mother scoffed and said, "You're the one choosing to get married. Figure it out yourself." The one bright spot in my childhood was my relationship with Grandmother Rose, my father's mother, who lived in a beautiful Victorian house on Maple Street. While my parents barely tolerated my presence, Grandmother Rose welcomed me with open arms and genuine love. Every Sunday, I would ride my bike to her house, where she taught me how to bake apple pies, shared stories about our family history, and listened to my dreams with the kind of attention I never received at home. Grandmother Rose was sharp as a tack until the day she passed away at 87. Her mind was crystal clear, her wit intact, and her observations about people were startlingly accurate. She watched how my parents treated me versus Amber, and though she never said anything directly critical, I could see the disapproval in her eyes when my father would dismiss my achievements or when my mother would fawn over Amber's mediocre efforts. Rose valued education, hard work, and genuine character, qualities that seemed to matter little to my parents when it came to their daughters. When Grandmother Rose passed away peacefully in her sleep, I was devastated to lose the one person who truly understood and appreciated me. The funeral was a blur of relatives and flowers, but what I remember most clearly was the reading of her will a week later. Sitting in the lawyer's office, I expected to receive maybe a piece of jewelry or some small memento to remember her by. Instead, the lawyer read words that changed my life forever. To my granddaughter Mackenzie, who was the only one who visited me regularly, who cared about my stories, and who showed me genuine love, I leave my house on Maple Street and all its contents. The room went silent. My parents' faces turned various shades of red and purple, while Amber's mouth dropped open in shock. The beautiful Victorian house was worth approximately $400,000, representing not just monetary value but decades of Rose's love and care. The lawyer continued reading Rose's explanation. Mackenzie understands the value of family history and will preserve the memories this house contains. She earned this inheritance through love, not obligation. Derek and I moved into Grandmother Rose's house when Lily was just 6 months old, and it immediately felt like home in a way my parents' house never had. We lovingly restored the original hardwood floors, carefully preserved Rose's antique furniture, and filled every room with laughter and warmth. I set up Rose's sewing room as a nursery for Lily, surrounded by the same quilts and family photos that had comforted me as a child. Every holiday, we decorated the house exactly as Rose had taught me, keeping her traditions alive while creating new memories. The house became our sanctuary and the center of our social life. We hosted neighborhood barbecues in the backyard garden that Rose had tended for decades, organized birthday parties for Lily that filled the living room with joy, and opened our doors to friends who appreciated the history and love that emanated from every corner. Derek often said that living in Rose's house taught him what a real home should feel like, warm and welcoming rather than cold and judgmental. However, my family's reaction to the inheritance revealed their true nature. During family gatherings at holidays, I noticed Amber walking through the house with calculating eyes, commenting on the value of Rose's antiques and making suggestions about better ways to use the space. My parents began making subtle comments about fairness and family obligations. "It's such a big house for just 3 people, my mother would say, looking pointedly at Amber's cramped apartment. Grandmother Rose probably would have wanted both her granddaughters to benefit from her generosity. Amber's financial troubles became increasingly apparent as her jealousy grew. She had dropped out of college in her junior year to pursue various get-rich-quick schemes that inevitably failed. Credit card debt mounted from her shopping addiction and attempts at starting online businesses selling everything from essential oils to handmade jewelry. Her latest venture, a boutique that lasted exactly 4 months, had left her facing serious financial consequences that my parents seemed to expect me to somehow solve. The manipulation began 18 months after we moved into Rose's house, when my parents arrived on our doorstep wearing expressions of manufactured concern and distress. My father Harold wrung his hands dramatically while my mother Beatrice dabbed at her eyes with a tissue, putting on a performance worthy of a daytime soap opera. They painted a desperate picture of Amber's financial situation that they claimed required immediate family intervention to prevent complete disaster. According to their sob story, Amber was facing imminent foreclosure on her apartment and would be homeless within weeks if someone didn't step in to help. They presented bank notices and legal documents that painted a picture of a young woman drowning in debt through no fault of her own. "She's your sister," my mother pleaded, gripping my hands with theatrical desperation. "Family helps family in times of crisis. You have this big beautiful house with plenty of space. Surely you can find room in your heart to help Amber get back on her feet." The emotional manipulation was expertly crafted, hitting every button they knew would work on me. They reminded me of how Amber had always looked up to me and how devastating it would be for the family if we let her become homeless when we had the means to prevent it. My father spoke about family obligations and how Grandmother Rose would have wanted us to support each other during difficult times. Derek was skeptical from the beginning, but I still harbored hopes that my family could change and that helping Amber might finally earn me the approval I'd craved my entire life. Against Derek's better judgment, I agreed to let Amber move into our guest room temporarily while she sorted out her finances and found a new place to live. We established clear boundaries about the arrangement. She would contribute a modest amount toward utilities, respect our family routines, and actively search for her own apartment within 3 months. Amber nodded enthusiastically at every condition, promising to be the perfect houseguest and expressing tearful gratitude for our generosity. The problems began immediately. Amber arrived with a moving truck full of belongings that far exceeded what anyone would need for a temporary stay. Designer furniture, multiple televisions, and boxes upon boxes of clothes and accessories filled our guest room and began spilling into other areas of the house. When I questioned the volume of stuff, Amber laughed and said she wanted to be comfortable during her stay, dismissing my concerns about our agreed-upon temporary arrangement. Within days, Amber began acting less like a grateful guest and more like an entitled roommate who had equal rights to the house. She rearranged furniture in common areas to suit her preferences, monopolized the television with reality shows Derek and I couldn't stand, and treated our kitchen like her personal restaurant. When Derek came home from work looking forward to quiet family time, he often found Amber entertaining friends in our living room, playing music loudly and leaving messes for us to clean up. The situation escalated when Amber began demanding access to the master bedroom, claiming the guest room was too small for all her belongings. She argued that since she was contributing to household expenses, she deserved equal consideration when it came to room assignments. When I firmly refused, she accused me of being selfish and reminded me that family should share equally. The conversation revealed her true mindset. This was no longer about temporary help but about establishing permanent residence. Amber's behavior with neighbors raised serious red flags about her intentions. She began introducing herself as someone who lived here rather than as a temporary guest, and started telling people she was co-owner of the property. Our next-door neighbor Mrs. Henderson mentioned hearing Amber refer to her house when directing delivery drivers, and the mailman asked me about adding Amber's name to our mailbox. Each incident made it clearer that Amber was positioning herself as a permanent resident rather than a grateful sister receiving temporary assistance. The breaking point came when I discovered Amber had changed her address with the bank, credit card companies, and various government agencies to reflect our house as her primary residence. When confronted, she argued that she needed a stable address for employment applications and financial planning, but the pattern revealed a calculated effort to establish legal residency. Derek was furious, demanding that we give Amber immediate notice to leave, but I still hoped we could resolve things through honest conversation rather than family warfare. What I didn't know was that Amber had been secretly consulting with a lawyer about something called adverse possession and tenant rights, exploring legal pathways to claim ownership of property through extended residence and improvements. She had researched laws about cohabitation, property rights, and inheritance disputes, gathering information that would later be used to wage a calculated legal assault against Derek, Lily, and me. Her temporary stay had been planned as the first step in a larger scheme to steal Grandmother Rose's house. The family dynamics shifted dramatically as my parents transformed from supposedly neutral mediators into active participants in Amber's campaign against me. Family members who had maintained cordial relationships with me for years suddenly became cold and distant after conversations with my parents. At our cousin Jennifer's wedding, relatives I hadn't seen in months avoided eye contact and whispered among themselves when I approached. Later, I discovered my parents had been systematically telling extended family that I had stolen Amber's rightful inheritance and was being cruel to my sister during her time of need. Amber's supposed improvements to the house were actually strategic moves to support future legal claims about contributing to the property's value. She painted the guest room without permission, claiming it was a gift to improve our home, then carefully documented her expenses and time investment. She hired handymen to install shelving and fixtures, always ensuring she paid the bills and kept receipts that would later be presented as evidence of her financial contribution to the household. What appeared to be helpful gestures were actually calculated moves in a legal chess game. Derek's discovery of legal documents hidden in Amber's room revealed the scope of her planning and research. Files contained information about property law, tenant rights, and strategies for challenging wills and inheritance decisions. She had printed articles about successful adverse possession cases and highlighted sections about establishing residence through improvements and financial contributions. Most disturbing were handwritten notes outlining a timeline for establishing legal claims to the property, treating our family home like a business acquisition. The confrontation with my parents about Amber's behavior revealed that they were not innocent bystanders but active participants in the scheme against me. When I presented evidence of Amber's legal research and her attempts to establish permanent residency, instead of being shocked or concerned, my parents immediately defended her actions and attacked me for snooping through her private belongings. Their instant pivot to Amber's defense proved they had been aware of her plans all along. My father Harold's response was particularly cruel and revealing about his true feelings toward me. Rose was clearly in the early stages of dementia when she made that ridiculous will, he declared, his voice dripping with contempt. Any reasonable person would recognize that house should be shared equally between both granddaughters, not hoarded by one selfish person who thinks she's better than everyone else. His words confirmed that he had never accepted Rose's decision and had been waiting for an opportunity to overturn it. My mother Beatrice employed more subtle emotional manipulation, positioning herself as the voice of family harmony and moral righteousness. A truly good daughter would want to share her blessings with her sister, she said, her tone suggesting that my resistance to giving away half my inheritance was evidence of fundamental character flaws. Amber has always struggled more than you. She needs this help, and you have the power to provide it. What kind of person turns their back on family? The ultimatum they delivered was designed to force me into an impossible choice between maintaining relationships with my birth family and protecting my own family's security and future. Give Amber half the house ownership, or lose us forever, my father stated with the cold finality of a business negotiation. They painted my refusal as selfishness while ignoring the legal, financial, and emotional implications of their demands. In their minds, I had no right to refuse because they had never truly accepted that the house belonged to me in the first place. My declaration that I would not be manipulated into giving away Lily's inheritance triggered an explosion of rage that revealed their authentic feelings about me. The masks of parental concern dropped completely as they declared me selfish, ungrateful, and a disappointment to the family. My mother accused me of thinking I was too good for my own family, while my father suggested that Derek had turned me against them with ideas about independence and self-respect. Amber's true character emerged as she began deliberately damaging property while maintaining plausible deniability about the accidents that seemed to happen whenever she was frustrated about my refusal to share ownership. Grandmother Rose's antique vase, which had survived 80 years in perfect condition, mysteriously fell and shattered when Amber was cleaning the living room. A watercolor painting Rose had cherished disappeared during one of Amber's rearranging sessions. Each incident was accompanied by elaborate apologies and explanations, but the pattern was unmistakable. The depth of my family's betrayal became clear when I discovered they had been secretly funding Amber's legal consultation and actively participating in building a case against me. Bank records revealed that my parents had been transferring money to cover Amber's attorney fees, while presenting themselves to me as neutral parties trying to mediate a family dispute. Their supposed concern for family harmony was actually a coordinated effort to steal my inheritance through legal manipulation and fraud. Amber's formal legal filing came as a shock despite the warning signs I had chosen to ignore. She submitted documents claiming she had contributed significantly to the house's down payment and renovation costs, presenting forged receipts and manufactured evidence of financial investment in the property. The paperwork painted a picture of a sister who had been systematically excluded from property ownership despite her substantial contributions, making me appear greedy and manipulative for claiming sole ownership. The forged documents were sophisticated enough to initially fool legal professionals, indicating that considerable time, effort, and expertise had gone into their creation. Bank statements showing transfers from Amber's accounts for house-related expenses were fabricated, complete with realistic dates and amounts that corresponded to actual home improvement projects we had completed. Receipts for materials and services bore Amber's name instead of mine or Derek's, suggesting months of preparation for this legal assault. My parents' willingness to provide false testimony supporting Amber's claims represented the ultimate betrayal of trust and family bonds. In sworn affidavits, they stated they had witnessed Amber making substantial financial contributions to the house and had understood the property to be jointly owned by both their daughters. Their lies weren't just about money, they were attacking my character, my integrity, and my right to the inheritance grandmother Rose had specifically intended for me. The emotional devastation of realizing my own parents were actively lying about me in legal proceedings was almost unbearable. These were the people who had raised me, who supposedly loved me despite their favoritism toward Amber, yet they were willing to commit perjury to steal my home and destroy my family's security. Derek found me sobbing in Lily's room one evening, wondering how people who claimed to love me could be so thoroughly committed to destroying my life. Financial pressure mounted as legal fees began draining our savings while Derek faced increased stress at work and Lily required expensive medical treatment for her asthma. The lawsuit created uncertainty about our housing situation, making it difficult to make long-term financial decisions or investments in home improvements. Every dollar spent on lawyers was money that could have gone toward Lily's medical care, family vacations, or building our future together. The impact on our extended family relationships was swift and comprehensive. My parents had been systematically turning relatives against me by spreading lies about my supposedly greedy behavior and cruel treatment of Amber during her time of need. Cousins who had been friendly for years began avoiding me at family gatherings, while aunts and uncles whispered among themselves about how I had changed since inheriting the house. The isolation was deliberate and effective. My parents' cruelest manipulation involved using Lily as leverage in their campaign against me. They refused to see their own granddaughter unless I came to my senses and agreed to share the house with Amber, treating a 7-year-old child as a bargaining chip in their real estate scheme. Lily couldn't understand why Grandma and Grandpa suddenly didn't want to see her, asking heartbreaking questions about whether she had done something wrong to make them stop loving her. Amber escalated her tactics by bringing increasingly questionable characters to the house under the pretense of having them evaluate potential improvements that would justify her ownership claims. Strange men appeared at odd hours claiming to be contractors, appraisers, or handymen, creating safety concerns for Lily and disrupting our neighborhood's quiet residential atmosphere. Neighbors began complaining about the constant stream of unfamiliar vehicles and unknown visitors. The systematic destruction of our community reputation was particularly painful because Derek and I had worked hard to build positive relationships with neighbors and become valued members of our residential area. Amber's loud parties, inconsiderate behavior, and parade of questionable visitors reflected poorly on our family, leading to formal complaints and strained relationships with people who had previously considered us friends. The house that had been our sanctuary was becoming a source of embarrassment and conflict. Derek reached his breaking point as the stress of constant family warfare began affecting his work performance, our marriage, and his relationship with Lily. The man who had fallen in love with me partially because of my strength and independence was watching me being slowly destroyed by people who claimed to love me. "This toxic family is destroying us," he said during one of our late-night conversations about whether we could survive the ongoing assault. "Something has to change, or I'm going to lose you to their poison." The discovery that Amber had been systematically stealing my identity for financial gain represented a level of betrayal that went far beyond family disputes about inheritance. While pretending to search for her own apartment and rebuild her credit, she had been using my personal information and our shared address to open credit accounts, apply for loans, and establish financial obligations that could destroy my family's economic stability for decades. The first indication of identity theft came through a phone call from our bank about a mortgage application I had never submitted. The loan officer was confused when I insisted I had not applied for a second mortgage on the house, showing me paperwork that bore my forged signature and detailed financial information that only someone with intimate knowledge of our household could have provided. The application sought to borrow against the house's equity for an amount that would have put our ownership at serious risk. My credit report revealed the full scope of Amber's criminal activity, showing multiple accounts opened in my name with debts totaling over $60,000. Credit cards, personal loans, and retail financing agreements appeared on my record with purchase patterns that clearly indicated Amber's shopping habits and financial needs. The addresses on the accounts alternated between our house and Amber's previous residences, creating a paper trail of her movements while using my identity. The revelation that my parents had detailed knowledge of legal strategies they shouldn't have possessed became clear during a heated argument when my father accidentally referenced specific property law concepts that were far beyond his expertise as a retired factory supervisor. His slip revealed that the family's legal consultation had been far more extensive than they had admitted, involving detailed planning sessions about how to challenge my inheritance and establish Amber's claims to the property. Hiring a private investigator revealed a pattern of fraud and manipulation that extended far beyond our immediate family situation. Amber had attempted similar schemes with other relatives, including an elderly uncle who had changed his will after she moved in to help with his care. Former roommates described patterns of financial manipulation, theft, and property damage that matched exactly what we were experiencing. The woman living in our guest room was not a struggling sister but a career criminal who specialized in exploiting family relationships. Amber's boyfriend Marcus emerged as a significant figure in the conspiracy when background checks revealed his extensive criminal history involving identity theft, credit fraud, and real estate scams. His presence in our house wasn't coincidental. He was likely coaching Amber on sophisticated techniques for document forgery, identity manipulation, and property theft. The relationship wasn't romantic but professional, combining their criminal expertise to target my family's assets. The discovery that my mother had called Child Protective Services with false reports about unsafe living conditions represented the most vicious escalation of their campaign against me. Using concerns about Lily's welfare as a weapon demonstrated their willingness to traumatize their own granddaughter to achieve their financial goals. The anonymous tip claimed I was mentally unstable, that Derek was abusive, and that our home environment was dangerous for a child. The CPS investigation was traumatic for our entire family, requiring us to submit to home inspections, interviews, and background checks while defending ourselves against fabricated accusations. Lily was confused and frightened by strangers asking her questions about whether Mommy and Daddy hurt her or made her feel unsafe. The case was quickly dismissed when investigators found our home to be loving and stable, but the emotional damage and public embarrassment lingered long after the official vindication. Phone records obtained through legal discovery proved that the CPS tip had originated from my mother's cell phone, providing concrete evidence of her willingness to weaponize child welfare agencies against her own family. The woman who had raised me was willing to subject her granddaughter to the trauma of a CPS investigation to support her campaign to steal our house. This revelation shattered any remaining hope I had harbored about reconciling with my birth family. Derek's threat to leave unless I completely severed contact with my family forced me to confront the reality that their toxic behavior was destroying my marriage and traumatizing my daughter. The man I loved was watching me being slowly poisoned by people who claimed to care about me, and he refused to enable their destruction of our family any longer. His ultimatum wasn't controlling, it was a desperate attempt to save our marriage from the cancer of my family's manipulation. The escalation of Amber's fraudulent activities coincided with increasingly desperate attempts to force me into signing away property rights through emotional blackmail, legal intimidation, and social pressure. She began timing her most outrageous behavior to coincide with important events in Lily's life, ensuring that birthday parties and school functions were overshadowed by family drama and conflict. The message was clear. Surrender the house or watch your daughter's childhood be destroyed by ongoing warfare. The morning that changed everything began like any other Saturday, with Derek making pancakes for Lily while I enjoyed my first cup of coffee in the peaceful kitchen that had become our sanctuary. That tranquility was shattered when a convoy of vehicles pulled into our driveway, led by my parents' car followed by a moving truck and several cars full of people I had never seen before. Amber emerged from the passenger seat of my father's car carrying what appeared to be official-looking documents and wearing the satisfied expression of someone about to claim a long-awaited victory. My father Harold marched to our front door with the authority of someone who believed he had legal right to be there, clutching papers he claimed were eviction notices that gave him the power to remove us from Amber's property. The documents were sophisticated forgeries that referenced real legal statutes and procedures, designed to intimidate us into compliance before we could verify their authenticity. Harold's performance was convincing as he declared that we were now trespassing on property that legally belonged to his youngest daughter. The sight of strangers loading our belongings into boxes while Lily watched in terror from the living room window was the most horrifying experience of my adult life. These people moved through our home with casual efficiency, handling our possessions like items being removed from a foreclosed property. Lily's toys disappeared into boxes while she cried and clung to my legs, asking why these people were taking her things and whether we would have to live in our car like the homeless people she had seen downtown. My neighbor Mrs. Patterson called the police when she witnessed the chaos from her kitchen window, concerned about what appeared to be a break-in or domestic violence situation unfolding in broad daylight. The responding officers initially seemed inclined to believe my parents' story, particularly when Harold presented his forged documents and spoke with the confidence of someone accustomed to being believed by authority figures. His performance as a concerned father dealing with a difficult daughter was masterful and nearly convinced the police to arrest me for trespassing in my own home. The police officers' willingness to consider my parents' version of events revealed how effectively they had crafted their narrative and supporting documentation. Harold explained that I had been living in family property without permission since grandmother Rose's death, that Amber was the rightful heir, and that they were simply helping her reclaim what belonged to her. The forged eviction notices looked official enough to initially fool law enforcement, while my frantic denials appeared to be the desperate lies of someone caught in wrongdoing. Amber's presentation of additional forged documents claiming to prove her ownership of the property was the performance of a lifetime, combining crocodile tears with righteous indignation as she described how I had stolen her inheritance and refused to acknowledge her rights. She produced fake receipts, manufactured bank statements, and forged property records that painted a convincing picture of systematic exclusion from property ownership despite her substantial financial contributions. Her acting was flawless as she portrayed herself as the victim of family greed and legal manipulation. Derek's arrival from the grocery store with proof of our legitimate ownership prevented what could have been a disaster that destroyed our family and vindicated my parents' criminal conspiracy. He carried copies of grandmother Rose's will, property deeds, insurance documents, and mortgage papers that clearly established our legal ownership of the house. His calm presentation of authentic documentation contrasted sharply with my family's increasingly frantic attempts to explain away the discrepancies in their forged papers. The public confrontation that followed Derek's arrival was the moment my parents finally revealed their true feelings about me without the masks of parental love or concern they had worn for 32 years. With neighbors watching from their yards and police officers taking notes, my mother Beatrice screamed that I had never really been their daughter anyway and that they owed me nothing after years of disappointment and ingratitude. Her words, witnessed by strangers, confirmed what I had always suspected but never wanted to believe. My father Harold's final declaration that Amber deserves this house and his accusation that I was just being greedy revealed the depth of resentment he had harbored throughout my entire life. The man who had raised me was willing to publicly humiliate me, traumatize his granddaughter, and commit multiple crimes to steal my inheritance for his favored daughter. His mask of parental authority crumbled as he became just another criminal caught in the act of theft and fraud. Amber's transformation from tearful victim to vindictive aggressor happened in seconds once she realized their scheme had failed. The sweet, struggling sister persona evaporated as she revealed her true malicious nature, screaming threats about destroying my reputation, taking everything I owned, and making sure I regretted crossing her. Her promise that this isn't over carried the weight of someone who had spent months planning my destruction and wasn't prepared to accept defeat. The aftermath of their failed eviction attempt left our house feeling violated and our sense of security permanently damaged. Lily required weeks of counseling to process the trauma of watching strangers handle her belongings while adults she trusted screamed at each other in our front yard. Our neighbors expressed sympathy and support, but the incident had shattered the peaceful residential atmosphere we had worked so hard to cultivate in Grandmother Rose's beloved home. Derek's unwavering support during the crisis proved that our marriage could survive anything my family threw at us, but it also marked the end of any possibility of reconciliation with my birth family. "We'll get through this together," he promised as we held each other that night, "but this ends now. No more chances, no more hoping they'll change. We protect our family from here on out." The criminal investigation that followed the attempted eviction revealed a conspiracy that was far more sophisticated and extensive than anyone had initially realized. My attorney Rebecca Martinez, recommended by Derek's company's legal department, had handled family fraud cases before, but she described our situation as one of the most systematic and calculated schemes she had ever encountered. The paper trail of criminal activity stretched back over 2 years, indicating that my parents and Amber had been planning this assault on my inheritance since shortly after we moved into Grandmother Rose's house. Bank security footage proved to be the most damaging evidence against Amber's claims about financial contributions to our household. Recordings from multiple financial institutions showed her forging my signature on loan applications, credit card agreements, and other financial documents over a period of 18 months. The video evidence captured not just the act of forgery but her practiced confidence in mimicking my handwriting and mannerisms, suggesting this was not her first experience with identity theft. Digital forensics revealed an extensive electronic trail of coordination between my parents and Amber, including hundreds of text messages, emails, and phone calls discussing strategies for challenging my inheritance and establishing her property claims. The communications revealed detailed planning sessions where they discussed legal technicalities, document forgery techniques, and psychological manipulation tactics designed to pressure me into voluntarily surrendering property rights. My mother had researched inheritance law while my father investigated eviction procedures and adverse possession claims. Grandmother Rose's former neighbor, 84-year-old Catherine Walsh, provided crucial testimony about Rose's mental state during the months leading up to her death. Catherine described weekly conversations where Rose expressed clear concerns about Harold and Beatrice's financial irresponsibility and their obvious favoritism toward Amber. Rose had specifically mentioned her intention to leave the house to the granddaughter who actually cared about family instead of just money, making it clear that her decision was deliberate and well-considered. The testimony from Rose's attorney, Jonathan Pierce, who had prepared her will, demolished any claims about her mental incompetence or undue influence in her inheritance decisions. Pierce described Rose as sharp, decisive, and adamant about her reasons for leaving the house to me specifically. She had expressed disappointment in Harold's materialistic values and concern about Amber's sense of entitlement, making her decision based on careful observation of her family's character rather than emotional impulses or cognitive decline. Investigation into my parents' financial history revealed a disturbing pattern of manipulation and schemes targeting elderly relatives and family members in vulnerable situations. Harold had previously convinced his elderly aunt to change her will by moving into her home as a caregiver, then placed her in a nursing home and sold her property for his own benefit. Beatrice had systematically borrowed money from various family members for fabricated emergencies, never repaying loans that totaled tens of thousands of dollars over the years. The discovery of Amber's previous victims provided a broader context for understanding her criminal methodology and the sophistication of her fraud techniques. Former roommates described identical patterns of identity theft, property damage, and emotional manipulation that matched our experiences exactly. Ex-boyfriends reported missing credit cards, forged checks, and mysterious charges on shared accounts. Even her college sorority had expelled her for stealing from other members and manipulating house finances. Marcus's criminal background check revealed convictions for identity theft, credit card fraud, mortgage scams, and elder abuse across multiple states. His relationship with Amber wasn't romantic but professional, combining their expertise to target families with valuable assets and weak internal dynamics. Police investigators found evidence that they had researched our family's financial situation extensively before Amber's supposed crisis that led to her moving into our house. The private investigator we hired, former police detective Sarah Coleman, uncovered evidence that Amber had attempted virtually identical schemes with 3 other families over the past 5 years. Her method involved identifying relatives with valuable property, engineering a crisis that required temporary housing, then working systematically to establish legal claims to ownership through forged documents and manufactured evidence of financial contribution. We were not her first victims, merely her most recent targets. Digital evidence from Amber's social media accounts contradicted virtually every claim she had made in her sworn legal statements about her living situation, financial contributions, and relationship with our family. Posts and photos showed expensive purchases and luxury experiences during the same periods when she claimed to be financially desperate and homeless. Her online bragging about easy money and family suckers provided devastating evidence about her true motivations and character. Text message records obtained through legal discovery revealed the full scope of coordination between family members, including specific plans to manufacture evidence, coordinate testimony, and maintain consistent lies during legal proceedings. My mother had sent detailed instructions about what stories to tell and which documents to forge, while my father provided research about property law and eviction procedures. The conspiracy was comprehensive and carefully orchestrated. Medical records and cognitive assessments definitively proved that Grandmother Rose had been mentally competent when she wrote her will, destroying any remaining arguments about undue influence or diminished capacity. Multiple doctors who had treated Rose in her final years testified about her sharp memory, clear reasoning ability, and strong opinions about family relationships. Her decision to leave the house to me was the product of careful consideration, not confusion or manipulation. Derek's employer's legal support proved invaluable in mounting our defense against the systematic fraud and manipulation we were experiencing. The corporate legal team had resources and expertise that individual families rarely possess, allowing us to conduct thorough investigations and build comprehensive evidence packages that clearly established the criminal nature of my family's actions. Their support transformed what could have been a devastating financial crisis into a manageable legal challenge. Community support rallied around our family as the truth about my parents' and Amber's criminal behavior became public knowledge. Neighbors who had witnessed Amber's disruptive behavior provided statements supporting our version of events, while local business owners who had dealt with her fraudulent attempts shared their experiences with investigators. The isolation my family had tried to create backfired as people recognized the manipulation tactics and chose to support the victims rather than the perpetrators. The courthouse on the morning of our final hearing buzzed with an energy that felt different from previous legal proceedings, as if everyone present understood they were about to witness something significant. Media representatives filled the back rows after local newspapers picked up the story about inheritance fraud and elder abuse, while family members, friends, and supporters created an atmosphere that felt more like a community gathering than a legal proceeding. Derek squeezed my hand as we took our seats, while Lily sat quietly beside us, still too young to fully understand the proceedings but old enough to sense their importance. Amber and my parents arrived with their expensive attorney, projecting false confidence that barely concealed their growing desperation as evidence against them had mounted over previous months. Their coordinated outfits and practiced expressions couldn't hide the tension in their movements or the way they avoided eye contact with anyone who might recognize them from news coverage of the case. Harold's attempt to appear dignified fell flat when he stumbled over the threshold, while Beatrice's overdone makeup couldn't disguise the stress lines that had deepened since their criminal activities became public knowledge. Judge Patricia Morrison had reviewed our case extensively before the hearing, and her reputation for thorough preparation and intolerance for fraud gave me hope that justice would finally prevail after months of manipulation and lies. As she entered the courtroom with her characteristic no-nonsense demeanor, I felt a shift in the atmosphere that suggested this day would bring resolution rather than continued uncertainty. Her sharp eyes surveyed the crowded courtroom before settling on the evidence tables laden with documents that would determine our family's future. The presentation of evidence created a devastating timeline of criminal activity that left no doubt about the systematic nature of my family's assault on our inheritance. Bank records, forged documents, text message logs, and security footage painted a picture of conspiracy that was both sophisticated and utterly lacking in moral foundation. Each piece of evidence built upon the previous revelations, creating an overwhelming case that demolished every claim Amber and my parents had made about their innocent intentions. Amber's testimony under cross-examination revealed the fundamental weakness of lies when confronted with documented facts and skilled legal questioning. Her carefully rehearsed answers crumbled as our attorney presented evidence that contradicted each claim she made about her financial contributions, living arrangements, and relationship with our family. What had seemed like convincing arguments in her prepared statements became obvious fabrications when challenged with specific dates, amounts, and documentary evidence. My parents' attempt to support Amber's claims backfired spectacularly when bank records proved they had lied under oath about their knowledge of her activities and their own involvement in the conspiracy against us. My mother's breakdown on the witness stand, sobbing about how they had only wanted to help Amber while admitting they had promised her the house years earlier, revealed the premeditated nature of their scheme and destroyed any pretense of innocent family concern. My father's explosive outburst when confronted with evidence of his lies provided the most dramatic moment of the proceedings and the clearest illustration of his true character. "She never deserved that house anyway," he screamed, his face purple with rage as he pointed accusingly at me across the courtroom. His loss of control revealed decades of resentment and entitlement that explained the viciousness of their campaign against my family. The man who had raised me had finally shown everyone exactly how he really felt about his older daughter. The court recess called when Amber attempted to destroy evidence by grabbing documents from our attorney's table created chaos that required bailiffs to restore order and demonstrated her consciousness of guilt more effectively than any testimony could have achieved. Her desperate lunge for paperwork that proved her criminality showed everyone present that she knew exactly how damaging the evidence was and was willing to commit additional crimes to prevent its presentation. During the hallway break, as lawyers huddled over damaged documents and court officers maintained watchful presence, Lily approached Amber with the innocent curiosity that only children possess. My daughter had been sitting quietly throughout the morning proceedings, but something in Amber's frantic behavior had apparently triggered her natural inclination to seek understanding from adults about confusing situations. I watched in fascination and growing hope as Lily walked directly up to the woman who had tried to steal our home. "Aunt Amber," Lily said in her clear 7-year-old voice that carried perfectly in the marble hallway, "why did you lie about Mommy?" The question was asked with genuine confusion rather than accusation, the innocent inquiry of a child trying to understand why grown-ups were saying mean things about her mother. Every conversation in the hallway stopped as lawyers, family members, and court personnel turned to witness what would happen next. Amber's response revealed the depth of her malice and her complete lack of regard for the child whose security she had been trying to destroy. "Your mother stole from me," she hissed, her voice carrying clearly to the court reporter who was still recording even during recess. "She took what belonged to me and pretended it was hers." The cruel words, spoken directly to a 7-year-old child, demonstrated exactly the kind of person we had been dealing with throughout this nightmare. But Lily's innocent follow-up question delivered the final blow that destroyed Amber's case completely. "But Daddy showed me Great-Grandma Rose's letter," she said, her small voice cutting through the stunned silence like a bell. "She wrote that she wanted Mommy to have the house because Mommy loved her the most." The existence of Rose's letter, which we had discovered while cleaning out her personal effects but had forgotten in the chaos of legal proceedings, had just been revealed by the person who mattered most. The letter, carefully preserved among Rose's personal papers and authenticated by handwriting experts, contained Rose's detailed explanation of her inheritance decisions and her specific concerns about Harold, Beatrice, and Amber's character flaws. Written just months before her death, Rose had expressed her fears about her son's greed, her daughter-in-law's manipulation, and her youngest granddaughter's entitled nature that expects everything to be handed to her without effort or gratitude. Judge Morrison's reading of Rose's letter aloud provided the most powerful moment of vindication I had ever experienced, as my grandmother's voice seemed to speak from beyond the grave to defend the inheritance decision that had caused so much family turmoil. Mackenzie understands the value of hard work, genuine love, and family history, Rose had written. She visits because she cares about me, not because she expects something in return. Harold has always been disappointed that I don't spoil his children the way he thinks I should, but real love requires teaching values, not providing endless handouts. Amber's complete emotional breakdown when confronted with Rose's letter provided the final confirmation of her guilt and the bankruptcy of her legal claims. Her sobbing admission that she had forged documents and stolen my identity, followed by desperate attempts to blame my parents for pressuring her into criminal activity, destroyed any remaining sympathy anyone might have felt for her supposed victim status. The golden child facade crumbled completely as she revealed herself to be exactly the entitled, manipulative person Rose had described. The courtroom drama reached its climax when my parents turned on each other in a desperate attempt to avoid criminal liability for their roles in the conspiracy against me. Harold blamed Beatrice for masterminding the legal strategy, while Beatrice accused Harold of promising Amber the house without considering the consequences. Their mutual accusations and finger-pointing provided devastating evidence about their shared guilt while destroying their credibility as concerned parents who had been manipulated by their youngest daughter. Criminal charges filed against all three conspirators included fraud, identity theft, attempted grand theft, perjury, and elder abuse related to their systematic campaign against Rose's wishes and their assault on our family's financial security. The district attorney's office had rarely seen such a comprehensive family fraud case, and prosecutors indicated their intention to pursue maximum penalties to deter similar schemes targeting inheritance and family relationships. 6 months after the courthouse revelation that changed our lives forever, our family had begun the long process of healing from years of manipulation, betrayal, and systematic abuse by people who claimed to love us. Derek and I had undergone counseling to address the trauma of family betrayal and learn healthy relationship patterns that protected us from future manipulation. Lily had recovered remarkably well with the help of child psychologists who specialized in family trauma, though she still occasionally asked questions about why some people lie and whether all families fight like ours had. The house on Maple Street had been restored to the peaceful sanctuary grandmother Rose had intended it to be, filled with love, laughter, and genuine family connections rather than the toxic drama that had poisoned our lives for so long. We had established new holiday traditions that honored Rose's memory while creating positive experiences for Lily that weren't contaminated by family conflict. Friends who truly cared about us had rallied around our family, providing the kind of supportive community that blood relatives should have offered but never did. Lily's wisdom about family relationships, gained through her innocent questions and observations during our crisis, had taught Derek and me valuable lessons about choosing love over obligation and protecting genuine relationships from toxic influences. Sometimes families hurt each other, she had observed with 7-year-old insight, but good families protect each other from bad people, even when the bad people are related to them. My final reflection on this journey through family betrayal and legal vindication centered on the recognition that true family bonds are built on love, respect, and mutual support rather than shared DNA or legal obligations. Grandmother Rose's inheritance had given me more than financial security. It had provided the foundation for understanding what genuine family relationships should look like and the strength to defend those relationships against people who would destroy them for personal gain. The peace I found in choosing my own family over toxic blood relations wasn't about revenge or bitterness toward my parents and sister, but about recognizing that some relationships are too poisonous to maintain regardless of their history or social expectations. Derek, Lily, and I had created something beautiful and lasting in Rose's house, proving that homes are built with love and respect rather than manipulation and control. As I finish sharing this incredible story of family betrayal, legal drama, and ultimate justice, I want to hear from all of you about your own experiences with difficult family situations. Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and protecting your own well-being? How do you handle relatives who try to manipulate or control you? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below because your stories might help other viewers who are facing similar challenges with toxic family members. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button to help others find it, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more real-life stories about overcoming family drama and finding justice in difficult situations. Ring that notification bell so you never miss our latest uploads, and consider sharing this video with friends or family members who might benefit from hearing about how truth and justice can prevail even in the most challenging family situations. Thank you for joining me on this emotional journey through one of the most difficult periods of my life. Remember that you deserve to be treated with love and respect by the people in your life, and never let anyone convince you that family obligations require you to accept abuse or manipulation. Until next time, protect your peace, choose your family wisely, and never underestimate the power of an innocent child's question to reveal the truth that adults try to hide.